Okay, we are live. So, my guest today is someone who genuinely made me sit up straighter when I first learned about his story. Dominic de Moura McCarthy is 25 years old. He grew up in regional Queensland, spent 15 years doing ballet, taught himself French because of it, and has ended up founding an international youth organization that now connects over 300 young leaders across 12 Pacific Island nations. He's a New Colombo Plan Scholar, a 7 News Young Achiever Award winner that I've had the privilege of mentoring, and someone who, on paper, to many people may look like he has it completely figured out. But when we first sat down together, what I actually found was someone who was juggling a lot and saying yes to a lot of things and carrying more than any one person can carry. And that's been a big part of my journey as well. And I know many of our listeners as well can relate to that, asking ourselves whether what we're working on is actually moving us forward towards the life that we want. And this conversation is really about that and what happens when a genuinely talented, driven, passionate, impactful person decides to stop performing and start being honest. And I think you're really going to love it. So, Dominic, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, David. Yeah, thanks for the invite and the very generous introduction. Yeah, it's been great to connect with you over the past 6 to 12 months through the Young Achievers Awards and do some sessions, kind of breaking down where I was at and kind of putting in, a bit of a plan to go forward. And I feel like I've been following that plan quite well. It's never perfect and still kind of learning and adjusting. And but I'm in a happy place. And yeah, I'm thankful for all of life's blessings and to be here with you and to contribute to your podcast.
Appreciate that. And I'm really glad to hear it, Dom. Like I said, you founded an international youth organization working across the Pacific and Latin America. You've won a national award. When we started working together, you mentioned that you were feeling somewhat overwhelmed and frantic and like you were doing a lot of things and somehow still felt like you were falling behind in some regards. I want to dig into that because this is something that so many of us, especially on this impact-driven path, and whether you're out there building a personal brand or a venture of your own, or a community organization, or a charity, and it demands a lot of you. And even if you might be winning on the surface, there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. So I'd love to hear for you what was actually going on underneath all of that.
Yeah, definitely. I've always been someone who's been quite motivated and wanted to say yes to every opportunity. I grew up in regional Queensland in Mackay, so it's a place where there's opportunities available, but not as many as you might find in the city. And so I always looked for new opportunities, whether it be in leadership or through dance or through the community, through volunteering or through the church. And I guess, I started to chart my kind of path forward and build my brand and reputation. And so I've always, like to say yes to opportunities and contribute. And, I always felt, a sense of need and want to give back to my community and be a servant leader and, embody those values of servant leadership. So you've got to be careful when you take on that responsibility and when you have that heart, because it can come with burnout or overcommitment or valuing work and projects over well-being and health and relationships. I think generally, I'm 25 now, so it's been really been really involved in this kind of stuff since I was probably in my early teens, so over a decade now. And I think overall I've done, I've tried to keep it pretty balanced, and I've always considered myself someone who's quite well-rounded and balanced. But yeah, there's always times where you feel like why am I doing all of these things, or what should I let go, or can I let go of anything? Because it's also hard to to let go of things when you've either taken a very prominent role in establishing something, or if you are pretty much the leader of something, you've got to bring people underneath you and align them with the vision of where you want to go, and then start to delegate. So yeah, growing up, I always had that spirit of excellence, wanting to do everything to my best ability, wanting to just do the best that I could. And for me, doing the best meant doing it to a very high level and often succeeding in a lot of things. But there's definitely a lot of behind the scenes that people don't see. There's a lot of difficult days, difficult minutes and hours, difficult meetings, difficult conversations. But overall, it's all part of this blessed journey that I've been a part of. So I don't like to complain too much. So I just like to keep it in perspective and stay positive and faithful to my story.
Yeah, thank you, Dom. I mean, I relate to that very strongly, and taking on as much as I could from an early age has been a big part of my journey, and in some respects has actually been such a blessing because, and not of respect to Yes Man, which is a movie with Jim Carrey, where I felt like, yeah, if I just say yes to a bunch of things, I'm going to create or increase my surface area for opportunity, right, by doing so. And it's true. And it did open up a lot of doors. And so I think the shadow side of that, or the dark side of that for me, is people pleasing and wanting to, just please and appease and serve everyone, even if it meant at times that I was abandoning my own needs and my own specific wants and desires in that moment. So that's been a journey that I'm going on to learn how to balance that. But I'm curious for you, Dom, when you're talking about servant leadership and saying yes to things and wanting to give back, like, how did that actually originate? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, it comes from definitely my parents' work ethic, my dad and my mum, my faith as well, because I believe that, we have a responsibility to fulfill our calling and to serve others. And also just brings me a lot of joy and a lot of satisfaction as well, volunteering my time or supporting others to see the value in themselves. I actually was thinking about a moment actually when we talk about like taking on a lot of responsibilities. And in my first year of university, I was going for, you mentioned the new Colombo Plan scholarship. And so I was going for that scholarship, which is one of the biggest undergraduate scholarships that we have in Australia. And it's specifically to study abroad in the Indo-Pacific. And so my first year of uni, particularly the first 6 months, I literally just like did as many things as I could possible, because I wanted to pretty much just put my best foot forward for this scholarship and just, be involved in as much as I could. And I had just moved from Mackay to Brisbane to actually pursue originally to study dance at the Queensland University of Technology. And then in the first week, I got injured and decided to actually withdraw from that course and go into business with CQ University. But then after that, I really just ramped things up because I was really had my eye on this scholarship. And I think that period of time, I was just completely all in. And so I think there's moments in time where like it can work, but I wouldn't be able to sustain that forever. And then once I got the scholarship and then moved overseas, I really was able to refocus. So I find it goes in waves, this type of feeling. You might resonate a little bit with that as well. There's definitely times where it can be good to do multiple things and you can actually build a really interesting skill set and learn a lot from it. And then you kind of reset and you're like, okay, now is the time to just go back and find that happy medium. Ultimately, the goal is to sustain that happy medium, over the long period and not fall back into this franticness. But I do think sometimes there's a time and place to really push yourself. And I know might go against contrary, popular belief. And, I know you talk a lot about, finding peace and things. But I do think we still need to, work hard, not necessarily hustle. Because hustle is the word I struggle with a lot because sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. So, what's your thoughts there?
It's a really good question. And I think life, I like to see it operating in seasons and cycles. There are seasons to sow and there are seasons to reap. There are seasons to push and there are seasons to rest. I think being able to be conscious of that and know which season you're in can really help. Because of course, if you're feeling like a surge of inspiration and you're having all of these ideas come through for what you can build, of course, taking action on it is super important. I like to think, and I, may agree as well, like we tap into these ideas or we get given these ideas from something outside of us. They're not ours, but it's our responsibility to act on them. And so there is an absolute, an appropriate time to take action. I think like hustle can turn toxic when it's driven by fear. So a lot of the messaging out there talks a lot about hustling and grinding, and your competitions, you got to outwork your competition. If you don't sacrifice this and this, you're going to fall behind. All of that the energy of where that's coming from tells me that it's fear. And then you're always operating from a limited constraint, as opposed to love, service, impact. All of these are more expansive, more nourishing, energies or emotional states to operate from. Fear is quite limiting and quite constrictive, and it actually has like a psychological and biological toll on the body as well. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
my take. How does that sit
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I think me like wanting to pursue dance after school, I really felt like, because I had given so much to it, and I'd come from a small community where I had become quite well known in that particular niche area. And I think I wanted to give it my best go and see where I could take it. And that's why I thought, okay, like I'll go pursue this fine arts course. And, it's a course where you dance, 5 hours, I think, in the morning, 4, 5, 6 days a week. And then in the afternoon, you have your lectures. So it's a very interesting course for a university degree, because it's very, very heavy on the practical side, but still had a lot of theoretical components to it as well, which is good as a dancer, because sometimes the programs are very practical based, which is necessary considering the art that it is and the hours that it requires. And so I found it a very interesting program, but I think going into it, I wouldn't say I went into it out of fear, but I definitely thought, okay, like worst case scenario, I can withdraw from it, because I thought I've just got to give it a shot. And I did the audition the year before in year 12, and I got offered a vice chancellor's scholarship. So that's like, one of the top scholarships that you can get when you go to a uni. I thought, okay, that really confirms that this is the right decision in my mind. If I got offered that scholarship, then this was the right thing. And at the same time during school, I had done it's called Start Uni Now. So it's like an early entry program with CQ University, another university. And that was kind of my backup, that if the dance didn't work out, I had these couple of business subjects that I had undertaken, and they offered me a 10-year direct entry. So in the next 10 years, I wouldn't have to go through the normal application process. I could be directly admitted into the course. And so having those options, it was always good to have options open and available, because then you can reduce the fear and you can move with more freedom. So going into the dance course, I had a lot of expectation of myself. I think other people had expectations on me too, to make it work and to take it forward. And then I got to the first week of the course, and the head of the program, the head of dance, said at the orientation event, it was the first day actually, she said, if you don't have a burning passion and desire to dance every day, then this course isn't for you. And straight away I thought, oh, this course isn't for me, because I wouldn't describe my passion and love for dance the same way she would describe the passion that we should have in that course. And something that I loved, and something that was incredibly challenging for me, because I've been blessed that a lot of things I've pursued in life, I've not come easily, but naturally I've been able to pursue different projects and ventures that my skill set aligned to. And dance was something where it was really a challenge, physically, emotionally, mentally. It was a real challenging thing that I undertook for 15 years, and one that I learned a lot from. And so when I got to the course, I was the only student there who was, living off Centrelink and had to work outside of the course as well. I was, one of the only students who had moved so far. It was moved 1,000 kilometers for this program. A lot of the students were local to Brisbane or Southeast Queensland. And so I also wanted to keep up my French studies and pursue French. And at the end of the day, I realized that this course didn't really align with those things, because there wasn't time to work. There wasn't time to pursue other subjects. There wasn't a lot of freedom in the course. And that was different to how I had been, being involved in a lot of things in a regional community. I was used to being able to have that freedom. And once you start to go down the tertiary education route, you really start to narrow down your area of interest to one specific topic, which is great, because you start to become a specialist. But I've always seen myself a bit more as a generalist. And that's why I think I resonated more with business studies, because I find business an interesting area to study, because it's the basis. At the end of the day, you got to make money to live. You got to, learn how to look at finances. You've got to learn how to find your unique value proposition. And that is something that you need to find in any area of life. So I found that the business program really has a lot of good foundations for life. Like you learn about tax, you learn about law, basic company law, but basic things that actually are quite useful in the everyday world. I mean, depending on what area you go to, I'm definitely more geared to business. So I think obviously it resonates more. But I think, yeah, then deciding when I got injured that first week of the course and then had to go to the hospital, and I think having that time to reflect, I was able to come to the decision to withdraw from the course and move into the Bachelor of Business program with CTU. And the funny thing was, when I spoke to the head of dance about it, she really commended me for the decision and said, "It's great that you've made the decision now in the first week, because a lot of your colleagues and peers will make this decision at the end of the first or the end of the second year." And I later found out that I think in this course, there was a very high dropout rate. There was, I don't know the statistics, but this course did have a high dropout rate. So I was the first to pull out, but it definitely wasn't last. Um, I felt like I didn't waste time, it's not about wait, even if I'd stayed in the course for a year and withdrawn, I would have learnt a lot. But I felt like I was, quite decisive in my decision and backed myself to change courses. And so that really, set me up on this different trajectory where the business studies were a good foundation to pursue these projects, these community impact initiatives, to study abroad, to focus on my languages, to still do some dance on the side and to pick up some dance teaching qualifications as well, but to really continue that like generalist type of role that I was looking for. And I think that generalist role is in a way the entrepreneurship world. You have to learn how to do everything, particularly at the beginning of any initiative. You have to learn how to, just do everything in a business, when you're an entrepreneur trying to start something, because you don't have the resources or funds necessarily to outsource or to bring in other people. And so I think that skill set really aligns with the entrepreneurship world, the leadership world as well. It's always good if you go into leadership, if you can have experiences from different areas of life, from not just one specific background or one specific area of study, but if you can come to a role and say, "Hey, yeah, I've done that. I can resonate with that person," or "Yeah, I've lived there," or "I speak that language." And so having all these different experiences really, I think, align beautifully to step into leadership and entrepreneurship initiatives, in my opinion. And yeah, so that's kind of been like a little of the early days coming out of school, kind of how I was feeling with expectation and having those options available. I think was able, as I said, was able to reduce the fear and give me more confidence to back myself in my decision.
Yeah, beautiful, Dom. Thank you. And look, I mean, it's rare that I speak to someone who's done ballet and dance, and especially who's maintained it for 15 years. I mean, that is a really phenomenal amount of time to stick with any hobby or activity or sport or art. So I'm curious, like, how has that experience with ballet shaped you, served you in your work now? What has 15 years of committing to a practice, to this art form, to build that level of discipline, like how has that helped you in the way that you show up now in your work and in your life?
Yeah, I think anything I approach now, I definitely look at it like a long-term lens. Particularly my NGO, the Pacific Australia Youth Association, I founded that over 6 years ago, and so I'm still volunteering with that 6 years later and leading that. And another organisation I volunteered with, the Australia Latin Emerging Leaders Dialogue. I was their longest serving volunteer for 5.5 years and just wrapped up that role a few months ago. So whenever I go into something now, particularly after that kind of crazy period in the first year of uni when I was pursuing that scholarship, I think particularly after that and in recent years, yeah, definitely I look more for long-term engagement and long-term involvement in things. That's not to say I don't do things that are like ad hoc or short or get distracted or do small little projects that I probably should have said no to. But yeah, definitely trying to work on the long-term game, because I think it's just, yeah, it's super rewarding where you can like look back of like a decade of service. I can't wait to see the day where like I've been volunteering with PAYA for 10 years, but I think that would just be, not that it's about the accolades and the time frames, but I think that would just be phenomenal to think like, wow, I've dedicated 10 years of my life to this project and to see where it's come. And I can already see that in the past 6 years. So the 15 years of ballet definitely taught me a lot, because there's definitely moments there where I wanted to pull out and withdraw and give up and quit. Yeah, through either the encouragement of my parents or through kind of myself, just giving myself a pep talk. I kept going and had amazing experiences, got to perform with, Queensland Ballet, in one of their child roles, got to take classes with Lee Shuang Sing, the former artistic director of Queensland Ballet and the author and author of the book Miles' Last Dance, and is also a film based on him. And yeah, got to meet some amazing people when I was living in France, working as an English language assistant. There was a guy from Mackay who was a professional dancer in the north of Switzerland. And as I lived on the border of Switzerland and France, I was able to, take the train up one weekend and watch him perform. And he's also married to a Brazilian. So just crazy stories that come out of it. And it's a beautiful art form. I have really lost a little bit of connection with it over the last few years, which, yeah, maybe I'm not actively pursuing any dance at the moment or doing it as a hobby, which is interesting considering I really did focus on it for a long time. But there's, as you say, there's seasons and phases of life. So things come and things go. And maybe in the future I'll get back into it as a hobby or go take my wife to watch a live ballet performance. Definitely kind of still follow the industry a little bit, but definitely not to the level of detail in the past. It's an art form that, requires a huge amount of dedication and resilience and time commitment. And because I did it as a child and a teenager and a young adult, those values and that work ethic was instilled in me at a young age. And I've seen how in my early professional years that really has set me apart from other people my age and given me that kind of extra impetus and stamina, really, I would say, like just being able to put in the hours and work on a project. And just having that stamina is really, I guess, stems from my training in ballet. And also a very important thing in ballet too is like if you're dancing 6 days a week, it's very important to rest as well. So that's another thing I've been able to learn, and taking a day off each week. I'm pretty good at that. I tend to, as I said, with the stamina, I think I tend to be able to kind of do long hours or do long days. And then I'm very good at just taking a day off and not doing anything really. And that's just like a huge shift, I think. For me, it's like a biblical principle personally. So I think it aligns with a lot of my beliefs, and I think it works. To be honest, for me, it works. So being able to take either Saturday off or Sunday off and doing that for a long period of time now, like that's been a regular practice of mine for many years. So that's something you also learn from these kind of high performance activities is the importance of rest and recovery. And a lot of skills are really applicable to your professional pursuits, to your personal, connections and relationships as well. So there's a lot to learn from it, and there's a lot that I'm grateful for.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Dom. I think something that stood out to me was just the pep talks that you're giving yourself, because 15 years, whether you're doing dance or you're building a brand or a venture that is you're intending for it to outlast you, something, if you're building a legacy of some sort, it does require that level of long-term commitment and focus. And maybe someone listening right now that's on that journey who might be, brushing up against certain obstacles in life or mental. So I am curious, like what were some of the things that you would say to yourself when you would give yourself this pep talk to remind yourself why you did it or why you should continue?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure if I can really pinpoint what I would say to myself back then. And I think, well, now I still feel the same thing sometimes. Like, why am I doing this? And I guess bringing it back to like, what's your why? Which is something I tried to do this exercise last year where a mentor was like, "Oh, what's your why?" And I like just rambled a bunch of things. I was just like, that's not really precise. That's not really a why. And it's still an activity that I need to revisit and rework on, because if you can kind of refine why you're doing something, then you have a constant kind of central theme that you can come back to. But I guess just like at the time with dance, and I guess just like understanding that, whether it was after the 5-year mark or the 10-year mark, just understanding that, well, I've already put in all these years of work. So, it's probably not worth it to stop now. And maybe, one day you feel a certain emotion, the next day you feel a completely different emotion about it. So just like giving yourself time and energy and space to process that and to not rush into decisions. There was many times that I tried to stop and like would just cry and like say to my mom, no, I'm pulling out, like I'm not doing this anymore. And then the next day I would have a completely different, being a teenager or a young adult, you can change your emotions quite quickly. And so just giving yourself time and space to come back to decisions it's even like a principle that, if you listen to financial podcasts, they give similar advice, like about making rash purchases. Like if you're making a purchase over a certain value, or if you're making a purchase that is a certain percentage of your earnings, give yourself 48 hours or a certain period of time to come back to that. And more often than not, you probably won't go ahead with that purchase because that was just a rash emotional decision. So, it's not necessarily, I'm not sure if I can really pinpoint exactly what I would say to myself, but if I can reflect on it, it was more about just giving myself time and space to not rush into a decision. And like when I withdrew from that dance course, that was a decision that I think I was in hospital for at least 24 hours. So, but I had reflected on it since I think orientation was on a Monday and I went to hospital, I think on a Friday. And then I think took an appointment with the teacher the following week. So like but it had been something I'd been thinking of for years, because even throughout school, I'd been thinking of this. I had been developing a keen interest in business and entrepreneurship. And kind of my solution to the problem was, okay, I think I did 2 internships actually. I think I did 2 at Queensland Ballet. So kind of working in the admin side of the organization. And it was like a high school program at the time. And I think I did it twice from memory and I absolutely loved it. And so that was kind of my solution to the problem was, okay, just combine the 2 and I would always tell people, oh, well, I'll work in the business side of ballet. And, everyone loved that. They thought that was a great idea. So that was kind of my solution, was kind of saying, okay, I'll just combine the 2. But then in the end, I pursued one and then pursued the other. And so it'd be something that I've been reflecting. That decision to kind of step back from dance had been something that I've been dealing with over a number of years. But I guess when I got the Vice Chancellor Scholarship, as I mentioned, I thought, well, let's give it a crack. I've got this backup option. I've got this kind of freedom in a sense that I was trying to create. So I don't know if I could really pinpoint exactly the pep talk, what I would tell myself, but, it's all about reflection and giving yourself time and, making those decisions, not making rash decisions, but being able to really really calculate it and kind of think it through. Yeah, I don't know if a week is a long time, but for me it was at the time.
For sure. And what I'm hearing is you following what what the next thing that is lighting you up looks like, and it seemed like you took a keen interest in business and entrepreneurship and saw the value. I think it would be helpful for whoever's listening to potentially understand like how to actually go from what was an initial spark of curiosity or intrigue to being able to found and build an organization that, as I mentioned before, connects over 300 young leaders across 12 Pacific Island nations. That's more than most people over 30 can achieve and accomplish, let alone, to do it, in your early 20s while balancing so many other commitments. How did you crystallize the vision for this? Like, can you take us through this process of, how this came to you and how you were able to translate this vision into reality? Because, I see that as one of the most powerful and, beautiful service-oriented things anyone can do for the world. It takes a lot. And so I'd love to hear what it took for you.
Yeah, well, back when I was in year 12, I was given the opportunity to travel to New Caledonia. So it was my first time going overseas. So I received a scholarship from the Queensland government to go on a program with James Cook University to New Caledonia. It was a French language and cultural program. Is that really first time overseas, going to a Pacific island, where I'm from, a region of Queensland or Australia where there's a lot of Pacific Islands and big Indigenous community. And also being able to practice the French language. So it really nailed all boxes for me. And to just tick it off and make things better, it was right as I graduated year 12. So it was essentially my schoolies was a study program, but I loved it. It was a beautiful experience. And then that really opened my eyes to wanting to pursue study abroad in university and wanting to learn more about the Pacific as well. And so the following year, I obviously started uni and changed degrees in the first week of uni. And then when I changed to CQ University, I called a global office, I think in my first week. And I think she said, I've never received phone calls from first year students in the first week. And I said, well, I want to get this scholarship and I want to go overseas, and what are my options? And so, ended up getting the scholarship the year later. That year I got actually another grant through the same scholarship and went to Vietnam for a few weeks, which was really cool. But yeah, moved to New Caledonia beginning of 2020 when I was 18 to do this big, it was a 19-month program actually. And as we know, 2020 was the pandemic. So I was only there for about 10 weeks. And so I had resigned from my job. I was back in Mackay at that point. I had resigned from my job working in real estate, was like all ready to go and moved overseas and had a lot of expectations for the program. And then, 10 weeks later, I was in the taxi on the way back to the airport and getting evacuated. So I guess those two experiences, those two times in New Caledonia really showed me that there was something missing between the Pacific and Australia in terms of youth initiatives. And when I went to New Caledonia for the second time at the beginning of 2020, I started to think of, I guess, what I could do to bridge that gap and plug that gap. And, the kind of geopolitics of it all and the environment and, the youth activeness has kind of really shifted in the last 6 years now. There's a lot more happening, for better or for worse. But at that time, I knew that I could potentially put something in place to bridge that knowledge gap. Both, youth in the Pacific and Australia wanted to learn about each other. They wanted to upskill and develop their leadership skills and entrepreneurship skills. They wanted to learn more about the cultural practices. And so the thing to do if you have kind of a vision to establish a group or a project is to just take the first step. So my first step was contacting two other Australians who were studying in PNG and Solomon Islands, and kind of pitched the project to them and pitched the kind of idea. And they were kind of on board with it. They agreed and they were keen to support, but it was really me who was just charging forward and driving this thing forward. And so the next step was, if you're thinking about business entrepreneurship, you think about the MVP, like the minimum viable product. What's the simplest, lowest cost thing I can do to test if there is an appetite for this? And so what we did was set up a Facebook Messenger group chat, which is very low cost. You can do it in 5 minutes. You can test the idea. And between the three of us, we put in all our kind of connections and friends. And I think we had 20 people in there from maybe 5 different countries to begin with. And the pandemic was happening as well. So there's a lot of good, online engagement happening between everyone, sending photos of where they live or the foods they eat, or talking about what language they speak or languages. And that kind of period really validated it. And those two co-founders took a kind of a step back because they had to focus on professional pursuits. And I really took the organization forward from there and brought in another person to assist the following year and did webinars and things. And so it's just about seeing what's the most simple thing you can do today to take that first step. So that might be maybe just researching like the area that you're thinking about going into, having a phone call with someone, doing like a poll in a group chat or setting up a group chat. There's many things, many forms that could take. It might be buying a plane ticket and going to that place to, experience life there, which I've had the privilege of doing and seeing, different cultures and communities. Yeah, now we're over 400 people now. I've had 150 people participate in our Youth Leadership Summit, which is our annual program that I implemented when I was back in New Caledonia again in 2022. And so this is the New Caledonia I've now been to, I think, 6 times in the last 6 years. I've been to a lot of the other islands too. And it all started because I took that initial step of reaching out to those 2 people and setting up the messenger group. And now we're one of the leading NGOs in the region. We've got recognition from, the Australian government, from other key stakeholders. And we're an organization that does, and not just says. A lot of organizations are very, very good at their social media. They're posting a lot. They're doing a lot of campaigns. But what are they doing on the ground in the communities with the grassroots youth? And, a lot of them might have access to more funding than we do. We don't have any funding. We are just a youth organization made up of 400 members now, kind of just generating our own grassroots activities. Of course, we are attracting more and more attention from different partners, but that takes a lot of work behind the scenes. Yeah, it really just comes down to what's the smallest step I can take today to kind of push the dial on this activity. And maybe the dial will come back the other way and you'll realize, no, this isn't the right thing, or I want to do it, but there's not the market for it, or it's not the right time. It all really aligned really well back then because it was the right time, the right place, the right people, and the right kind of energy and passion behind it all.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because it's such a beautiful reminder that you don't need to have some big outlandish project or tangible thing mapped out. Like, that comes later if and only if, like you said, there is an appetite. So what a beautiful low touch way to get something so meaningful started in a messenger group chat. That's so cool. I want to hear more about just around I guess some of the challenges or fears that have come up on your journey, Dom, because, when we first connected last year, we did speak a lot around, tall poppy syndrome and, the way that manifests on this path of, you know, going against the grain and building something of your own and striving and achieving. So, yeah, can you speak more to your experience with that and any other mental challenges or fears that have come up for you along the path of building your career and business success?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, tall poppy syndrome is definitely, I think, a big issue in Australia because we always want to pull down people who are successful and who have achieved great things. Of course, there's always a way about going about our business as well and doing it with the right heart and the right attitude. But I think we should be encouraging more success, and it's something that's definitely, I think, being compounded through social media because there's a lot of comparison that happens. There's a lot of you probably experience a lot of people that follow and look at your work, but don't necessarily like or engage with it, which is fine. You don't have to like everything and interact with everything, but you can kind of see it through social media as well that there's definitely people out there watching you and that are interested in what you're doing, but not really don't really go any further than that and kind of supporting you. So yeah, I think it's something that a lot of people resonate with this culture that we've developed of kind of anti-success or kind of pulling people down. I think you've got to surround yourself with a really good circle of people, and that can be honestly, when I say circle, like that can be one or two people. Doesn't have to be 10, doesn't even have to be five people. Like really peeling back the layers and just letting go of friends that well, let's not even use the word friends, people who are pulling you back or holding you back or have jealousy. And I've definitely experienced it a lot. And I think a lot of people listening will understand what we're talking about. So I think to get past that, you've got to just surround yourself with the right people who will also can also give you some good hard feedback as well, like some give you the facts and say, hey, nah, that's not going to work, or maybe focus more on this. But at the same time, they also definitely encourage you and uplift you and inspire you. So, yeah, I try to do that as much as I can with other young people, support and comment and engage. I can't always do it, but I do try to, yeah, maintain that interaction with people who I see value in and people who I want to support and uplift. And disconnecting from others who are, like I said, aren't there to support you. So whether that be unfollowing them or muting them or withdrawing them from your friend circle, it's something also that takes time. Like all of these things do take time. So you can't say, oh, tomorrow I'm going to have these three amazing business people in my circle, and none of this negative energy will all be gone. It's a work in progress. So you've got to start to cultivate that community. And there's a really interesting. I have to paraphrase it because I won't do justice to how eloquently he explains it. But Erwin Raphael McManus, a preacher, communicator, futurist originally from El Salvador and now in the US, he has a really interesting way of talking about it, how you get to this period of life where you're kind of in this transition phase. So you're not quite into the friendship circle of the people you want to be into. And you're kind of moving out of that other circle you were in. So he says it's a very lonely space to be in. And I feel like that space can actually endure for a long period of time where you're trying to go to that next level of friendships. And I definitely have felt this recently of you're trying to tap into that kind of upper level, I guess, for lack of a better word. And those people who don't have tall poppy syndrome, once you kind of move through life, you kind of realize that those people with those attitudes are normally um, they're in certain, how do I describe it? They're in all areas of life, to be honest, but often maybe not quite in the area that you're in or you're working in or what you've been doing. So you've also got to, yeah, see who's giving that feedback. Where's that feedback coming from, and where's that criticism coming from? And it's great to take on criticism and feedback if it's constructive and if it's given with the right intentions. So um, yeah, it's yeah, something that I've dealt with a lot, and it's been a slow process to work through. As I said, I think my strategies to kind of deal with it are to give out like the energy that I want to attract. So encouraging other young people or supporting their projects or giving them some constructive feedback on, always try to be positive and frame it in a positive way, but yeah, how I can support them. I got like a really weird message, like I think a month ago from someone, and I thought about like how to respond to it. It was a very kind of actually very passive aggressive message. I didn't appreciate it at all. And I thought about, oh, how am I going to respond to this? Like, should I be diplomatic? Should I go defensive? Should I go on the attack? And I almost responded straight away, but then I came back to it like 24, 48 hours later. And I just thought to myself, no, I'm not going to respond. It's not even worth it, to be honest, to like lose my peace over what this person said. And so I just didn't respond to it. And now that, that's gone away, that person hasn't contacted me again. I think that person's probably watching what I'm doing still, but yeah, you just got to really sift through all the noise and find the pieces of value that are out there. So
Mm.
yeah, I've been blessed to come across some really inspiring people recently who have really inspired me and kind of motivated me, and reconnected with some old mentors who are very senior as well. And just reach out with an email or message because they're people that I value and want to maintain that relationship with, professional relationship and connection with them. So you've also got to put in the work yourself to pursue or engage with those people who you want to be around, and you can't just kind of expect it kind of all to fall on your lap. It takes work and it takes.
Well, firstly, man, I respect you for choosing not to engage with that message and not give your power away to some external person. I think that takes a lot of self-control and composure and awareness. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I really relate to the lonely chapter, man. It's like, I would say for me, it was like 3 years, maybe, like, yeah, 2, 3 years of realizing that I don't necessarily resonate with my old friendship group anymore. Um, I'm struggling to contribute in conversation. It just doesn't feel like there are many shared interests or values anymore as I'm growing. And I haven't found my tribe yet. And then, yeah, it's lonely. And yeah, I mean, so many years and nights just like, oh, I guess it's just better to stay at home because I feel like that seems more fitting or more like appropriate for where I am right now. And it's tough, it's been really tough for me to navigate that space, because there's also a lot of grief as a company that in some ways outgrowing certain social dynamics and relational dynamics. People who've played a part in shaping your identity and realizing that you're no longer resonating with them. So I'd love to hear like what has helped you go through that process, if it's disconnecting from certain energies that are not supporting you, uplifting you, or meeting you where you're at, and then walking that road, the lonely, isolated road, until you were able to be surrounded by these inspiring mentors. What's kept you going through that? Because it can be really, really tough.
Yeah, I think just like feeding our minds and souls and hearts and brains with, really good content, because there's a lot of content out there these days. So just being able to follow the right people on social media is a really good starting point, because like the algorithm is very powerful, as we all know. And if you can get the right stuff in your feed, you can really, like, imagine opening your Instagram and there's, a lot of productive and uplifting content compared to like, memes and shootings and politics and things, which, there's a time and place to engage with all that stuff. But I think, yeah, just like using social media to try and, or not even using social media as well, like turning it off and go to like read a book or journal or pray or go to YouTube and watch a specific, specific person that you had in mind or a specific topic. Because you can really, I think, like YouTube and podcasts, you can really kind of curate the content you want to see as well, which you can do through any platform. But those platforms I find are like, I enjoy just plugging in a specific person or a specific song, or, just finding what I need in that time and place. So yeah, definitely like using the networks and the resources that we have to our advantage. I'm not a huge book person. I went through a phase of like audiobooks and I want to get back into that. I'm probably more like a podcast person or music person, really. Like a lot of gospel music I enjoy. Yeah, so for me, it's like very faith based as well. prayer is very important for me. So yeah, that's kind of how I navigate through these seasons. Yeah, like reaching out to the people that you want to be friends with or you want to connect with. So whether that be like a message on LinkedIn to have a coffee with them, whether for me it was like joining a kind of closed leadership community with a leader that I really admire. So it's like a paid subscription. So joining that, and then I get access to like a Zoom call where I was able to ask him a question directly. Then he kind of saw me on Instagram as well. So yeah, you kind of have to make the step, make the move yourself as well. Not to say I'm going to be friends with him. I mean, I would be open to it if he's happy, if he wants. But making the moves to connect with those people and to push into those, push in the sense of not aggressively, but like push in the sense of reaching out and trying to tap into that group or that person. And it's most people are normally pretty open to it. Obviously, like the higher you go, like the higher the net worth, the higher the harder it gets. But it's little by little. So yeah, you've got to make the effort yourself to send a few LinkedIn messages or emails or join a few Zoom calls and ask questions to kind of cultivate this community around you, resources that you can refer to and tap into.
You mentioned faith and gospel music. Given your connection to the higher power of your own understanding, Dom, how has that supported you on your journey? Whether it was through dancing or through COVID or through building PAYA, and I know you're working towards building up the Global Institute for Leadership, relationships. Like, how has having this faith supported you?
Yeah, for me, it's like my everything, my belief in God. So as a Christian, that is what sustains me every day. That's how I begin my day and end my day. I'm not perfect with fit and not yeah. I've got my own faults and failures as well. So it's just about that constant effort to strive to be better, to strive to be a better person, a more whole and complete person, which I link back to my faith through I guess essentially through Jesus and Christ is my belief there. So, yeah, something that sustains me, like this kind of supernatural. I guess I would describe it as supernatural, so kind of outside of the natural realm. Because a lot of the time I try to answer this question or try to give justification. There's definitely things we can do in our own with our own, we have responsibility, we have the opportunity to make decisions, to do things or to not do things. So a lot of the responsibility sits with us to how we're going to chart our life and journey. But I also believe there's, a plan and purpose on our life, and we have a calling to pursue. And good things happen, bad things happen. Everything happens for a reason, whether we understand it or not. So for me, it's being able to reconnect with my faith and my belief is always something that energizes me, something that I don't talk about enough, to be honest. But when people ask me about it, I'm always happy to open up that personal, vulnerable side of my journey. And yeah, I mean, doing work in the Pacific and Latin America, two regions who share those values and beliefs as well. So statistically, very high rates of Christianity over there in those two regions. So I've been able to particularly in the Pacific, be able to connect with a lot of young leaders through that path as well as through like the leadership and entrepreneurship path. And so being able to connect to people on multiple levels is always, it always just takes that relationship or that connection to the next level. So yeah, for me, it's something that's very personal and something that has definitely sustained me. I believe to achieve these things. But for me, it's not really about the achievements. It's about the aligning it to God and to essentially doing what He's asked me to do, and having that spirit of excellence too is I think something. No matter what your belief is, you can really take on that value of spirit of excellence. And what is a spirit of excellence? Like just doing everything you can with the best of your ability, everything you can, like cooking your dinner, just doing the best dinner you can. Going to the gym, just doing the best session you can, like your maximum. Study the hardest you can. And so just doing everything to the very best. And once you like push yourself to your very best in every aspect that you can, the growth is just exponential, because you just will completely surprise yourself about your abilities and about your capacity if you can, you probably, you experience those really productive phases during the day where you put the phone away and for like half an hour or an hour, you like get through so many things. And then for like the next 2 hours, you're like on the phone, you're scrolling through your phone, you're getting a snack. And so it's just like that short period of that short experience that you just had, just multiplying that throughout the day, throughout the weeks, and then throughout the years. So I find that I have those short spurt, like I think everyone would find you have those kind of really short bursts of productivity. And yeah, just channeling that kind of that vibe into everything you do. And so spirit of excellence isn't necessarily about productivity. Like I don't want to frame it in that mindset, but like if you can think about the time that you were really productive, that is when you were giving your very best and doing your very best. And so if you can kind of carry that into other areas of life, yeah, the growth is exponential, as I said.
Amazing. And look, I appreciate you opening up more about your faith and connection to God. A lot of people, a lot of high performers and leaders, professionals or entrepreneurs alike that I speak with have a spiritual connection. And so if someone is listening right now who maybe is curious about that and about developing a relationship or deepening their existing relationship with a higher power of their own understanding, what would you say to them?
Go for it. Like, be curious. And there's a lot of historical evidence. Like, if you can start from more of a historical point of view, like study about the history of civilization and see these historical figures who there is evidence that these people came to the earth. I'm speaking in my specific case, Jesus. Whatever you want to study, you can just start from a very historical perspective, which is objective and factual. There's hard evidence out there. And then you might start to find something that piques your interest or something you want to learn about. For me, the best-selling book, it's the Bible. So for me, that's the best-selling book in all of history. And I think that speaks a lot to how it's touched people's lives. So you can access it these days just by online, bible.com is easy. And reading that is very interesting because it's, there's different translations, so different ways that it's been written and translated, depending on if you want more of like there's a poetic type of Bible, there's more of the historical language, which is very hard to understand. Then there's more the modern version that is everyday current English. So yeah, it's very interesting because these things have historical connections. So you can just bring it back to, hey, I want to learn about the history of mankind and the history of civilization and see where that takes you. It's at the end of the day, it's educational and might also take you down like a spiritual path as well.
That's such a beautiful frame. I'd never really heard someone frame spirituality or connection to God through a history of mankind. And that's it seems like a very tangible place to start as well, and just analyzing ancient wisdom traditions and what historical texts point to. And a lot of them all do point to a greater unifying power that exists. So thank you, Dom. And yeah, as we bring this in for a landing, I'd love to hear for you in the spirit of this show's name. What does it mean to be liberated for you?
It's a nice word because in Portuguese it's liberdade and in French it's liberté. So it has Latin roots, that word liberation in English. For me, it's just comes to mind is freedom, because the word freedom in Portuguese and French is the words I just mentioned. So for me in English, liberation is freedom. So I think like freedom from fear, freedom from change, because things change for better or worse. Yeah, knowing our identity and purpose, that's a very free feeling. That's a very liberating feeling, is to know who you are and what your purpose is. And as I said, like the exercise, know your why, which I'm not very good at, is a good place to start. I realized that when I looked into it, because you kind of just have to unpack things layer by layer and then come up with like a one sentence explanation, which is very, very hard to do, I think, personally, something that I'm not very good at. Yeah, for me, it's like, yeah, freedom in our identity through purpose and calling. I think that's liberation for me. And I think from more of the professional side, it's like having that ability to, pursue work and projects that isn't necessarily tied to a specific geographic location, things that bring, financial freedom as well and bring freedom in our scheduling as well. I think that's also a very liberating feeling is when we can find that in our professional work as well, because, most of our life is work. Most of our life is spent working. So, you spend a huge amount of your life working. So if you can find something that you really enjoy, that you can, make a decent income from it, maybe you can do it from a specific location or not from a specific location, from, a virtual location. I think that also is something that's really important for me as well in all of it too.
I love that. Yeah, you and me both, Dom. That location freedom is very appealing and attractive as well. So thank you. If people want to, learn more about you, Dom, connect with you, learn more about what you're working on, where can they go?
So on LinkedIn, I'm pretty active there. It's just my full name, Dominic de Moura McCarthy, or my Instagram is a little bit shorter, Gringo, Gringo, Dominic. The word gringo means in Spanish or Portuguese means foreigner. So it's a colloquial way. If you travel to Latin America, they call you that. If you're essentially look like me and you're a little bit lost, they'll call you that. Yeah, apologies for the use of other languages in my username. But yeah, that's Gringo Dominic is my Instagram.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Dom. And for you who's listening, if you've made it this far and you really resonated with Dom's story, I highly encourage you to connect with him. He is, as you said at the very beginning, I see him as a servant leader and very devoted to making the world a better place and serving humanity. And if something in this episode piqued your curiosity, please share it with someone who you feel might benefit if they're struggling, developing a vision or a purpose for their life of their own, or wanting to deepen their connection to something greater than themselves. Yeah, pass it along. I love you so much. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, Dom.
Thank you.